in search of soil.
What have you seen in
Right.
systems that have really healthy soil in terms of plant health, pest resistance? Do you notice a correlation between soil
Mhm.
health and plant health? That's something that a lot of people claim.
Oh,
There's
absolutely.
mixed feelings. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, where you have healthy soils, one of the reasons, one of the things that I've studied some is pest suppression. Most insects go after unhealthy plants. And unfortunately, when you raise crops on degraded soils, do you think you get healthy plants? Well, you get incomplete photosynthesis. And when you have incomplete photosynthesis, you get a lot of nitrates in your plants and you don't get full protein synthesis. Insects love nitrates. And when they sense that a plant is unhealthy, they'll attack it. And that's why a lot of our plants, since they're unhealthy, the insects, we see a lot of insects. But if you have a healthy plant, the insects can sense that you have full protein synthesis, you'll have higher protein content, you'll have higher test weights, you'll have more dense food, and the insects will leave that alone because they cannot digest the amino acids and the full proteins in there as well as they can the nitrates. So a lot of our plants, even though maybe we're getting pretty good yields, the nutrient density is a lot lower. The protein content is lower. We've kind of assume that high yields, all crops are the same, and that the yields are all the same. But really, we should be talking yield wise. We should be thinking about total pounds of protein versus just yields. Yield is one of those things that, I can have 300 bushel corn, and let's just say it has 5%. Let's keep the numbers even. 5% crude protein. Okay. Well, let's compare that to say 200 bushel corn, or let's just say 200 bushel corn. What if I had 200 bushel corn? And just to make the math easy, generally it'd be maybe 8-9%, but let's just say it's 10%. Take 200 bushel times 10 to 10% crude protein, and then take 300 times 5% crude protein. You can see that the 200 bushel corn actually has more protein in it. And if you feed that to a cattle or to a hog or to a chicken, they will eat all of the high density food that is, and it's probably more complete and it's going to be healthier for them. They'll eat all that first before they'll eat the low density. So we really ought to be talking about nutrient density and even human health. They're all related. A lot of these, if you look over the last 40, 50 years, there's a much higher incidence. I happen to be diabetic. So diabetic, autism, all these diseases, yes, yields have gone up in the United States, but with that has come less nutrient density. And some of this could be related to human health, some of the problems that we have with human health. Think about all the people with arthritis and all the aches and pains. Now, it is true we're living a little longer, but the quality of life in a lot of cases, if you look at our bone density and some of the things that are going on, we're not as maybe healthy as what we could be if we were eating better food. So I think it's all related. It's very interesting to study. I think there's a lot of new innovations out there, things that we're starting to make these linkages together, and slowly but surely, the other professions are starting to look at this. I mean, we all know good food when we eat it. You can taste the difference. I mean, and those are the flavonoids. And our bodies, we're just like in that sense, we're like a cow. If you give a person a bad let's say a nutrient dense tomato and one that's less nutrient dense, if you bite into the one that tastes good, you'll eat all that one first. And then if you're still hungry, you might go after the other one, but you'll say, man, this one just doesn't taste as good. We can sense the difference. We're just not quite as good at it as maybe the cow can smell it. We have to actually eat it or taste it before we're probably going to be able to tell the difference. You might be able to weigh it, but There
Yeah.
are new machines out there. I don't know if you've heard about this, but they have now come up with one that's probably going to hit the supermarkets here pretty soon. It costs a couple $100, but you can actually test your produce now to tell you how nutrient dense it is. So that's kind of a new innovation that's coming out that I think people will start to get into this nutrient density a little bit more. And that may have an influence on us and how we're going to be producing our produce in the future. So
does it really come down to then, I know there's no absolute answer to this, and I don't think anybody knows, but is a healthier plant just lacking photosynthesis? It's not photosynthesizing at its full potential. The nutrients, the minerals might be there in the soil. It just can't get access to them. Like, what's causing the plant to be healthier? And this goes back to that yield thing of 200 bushel corn versus 1,100 bushel corn. What could tip that limit? How do you get better photosynthesis? How do you get healthier plants?
You got to have the microbes. And so it's all about that soil environment. When we start to till the soil, we get imbalance of microbes. We're mainly bacteria and not enough fungus. We want to have that balance. So the soil compaction is going to have an impact. You're going to have more bacteria. So now you're going to have that imbalance. You're not going to have the right nutrients. And if you don't have the right nutrients, you might have the nutrients there, but it may be in the wrong form. And if it's not plant available, then we're going to limit photosynthesis. So it's all these things combined. You got to have the right soil environment. You got to have the right microbes. And then a lot of times the nutrients are there, but they're in the wrong form. You got to have the right microbes to transform them into the right form so that they're plant available. And then that whole system then will add more carbon into your soil. Over time, you'll build up that carbon in your soil. Now you're at full production. But think about this. If we overuse fungicides, we start overusing the chemicals. Glyphosate is one of those examples. So we know that glyphosate is a chelator. Okay, so it ties up a lot of micronutrients, okay, especially manganese and a couple other things. But one of the things that we're seeing on almost all of our soybeans and a lot of our corn is it's manganese deficient. Well, that's going to limit photosynthesis, okay? And so the theory used to be that a lot of people would talk about the staves in a barrel. And they say whatever element is limiting, that's the one that's going to, limit your photosynthesis, limit your yield. But what has happened over time is because we put on so many nutrients, sometimes we have an excess nutrient. So the barrel stave idea is the law of the minimum. Now we're starting to concentrate a little bit more on the law of the maximum. And what does the law of the maximum say? Every nutrient has an effect on other nutrients. So if you get too much of one nutrient, it can tie up some of the other nutrients, okay? So maybe by actually cutting back, we tend to overapply nitrogen and phosphorus and even potash a lot or potassium. If we're overapplying them, we could be tying up some micronutrients. So maybe if we put on a little bit less of some of these, and maybe we add a little bit of the other ones, but we also improve the biology, all of a sudden we get things back into balance, and all of a sudden our barrel, all of a sudden the staves are a little more even, and we can hold more water in that barrel, which means we're basically generating more yield. And maybe not only more yield, but maybe more nutrient dense and healthier food at the same time. So it all works together. We got to understand it. That's why it's been a little bit complicated. We haven't understood how the pieces all move together and how they all fit together. We're starting to get a little clearer understanding on what we need to do to make this system work better. So again, glyphosate, what it does is it creates conditions that chelate manganese. Manganese is used by the plant to split the water molecule in half. And if you don't have enough manganese, you're going to have incomplete photosynthesis. Glyphosate also causes more fusarium in the soil. So now we're getting this disease organism there. One good way to overcome glyphosate is actually oats. Oats does the exact opposite. It promotes manganese, makes manganese more plant available, and it reduces some of the fusarium in the soil. So we can use cover crops. I would suggest that people, we've really overused Roundup. Try to use like crimper rollers and maybe try to limit how much you use. If you're going to use Roundup, try to, instead of using it 3-4 times a year or 5 times like they do in cotton, maybe try to use it only once. Or if you can get away with not using it at all, use a crimper roller, use Gramaxone. We actually find with Gramaxone, we don't see a dip in soil health. Every time that we use Roundup, we'll actually see the soil health go down in the soil for a couple weeks until that soil recovers. But we really want to keep our microbes happy all the time. And I think glyphosate is starting to reach its economic life. There's a lot of lawsuits out there, and we've overused it. And I think over time, we're probably going to have less reliance on glyphosate just because of the economic forces now and the resistance to the overuse of glyphosate. So we need to start thinking ahead of what are we going to use to replace that glyphosate and see if there isn't something else. I'm not saying we have to totally get rid of it. I'm just saying maybe we've overused it. Maybe we can cut back a little bit, and we'll find out that maybe it actually improves our soil health a little bit more. So,
yeah, I think
it also has an impact on phosphorus,
right?
But that's pretty hard to talk about. I know just enough to be dangerous on that, so I prefer not to talk about it. But it can have an impact on that.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out some of the great clips and watch the full interviews right here on In Search of Soil.